Welcome everyone, and thank you to those joining us live and to those listening in afterwards. I'd also like to warmly welcome our guest today, whom I'll shortly introduce in a few minutes. My name is Chris John. I'm FIP lead for the Evidence and Impact Digital Event Programme, or series if you prefer. I'm also FIP lead for Data and Intelligence. FRP's vision is a world where everyone benefits from access to safe, effective, quality and affordable medicines and health technologies. Our mission is to support global health by enabling the advancement of pharmaceutical practice, science and education. We're pleased to be delivering this event. This is our first event, episode number 1 of a series of 3 events of Evidence and Impact. Today's event is Evidence and Impact, Where Are We Now? And where next for data and intelligence for advancing pharmacy worldwide. This special webinar series of events will be delivered from May to October this year. With the facts, data and science at our disposal, we can provide evidence and impact that advances pharmacy and pharmaceutical science across health systems. People are using data more efficiently and effectively than ever before in a myriad of different and essential applications. Artificial intelligence, algorithms, and data-driven technologies are other exciting areas that are improving patient outcomes. The programme is composed of 3 episodes that will be focusing on developing pharmacy intelligence to provide evidence and impact. As I mentioned today, we are looking at where are we now with evidence and impact and where next for data and intelligence for advancing pharmacy worldwide. In July, we will then look at building pharmacy intelligence infrastructure to provide evidence of impact. And then in October, we'll be looking at how to create development goal indicators that will bridge data and outcomes. So we do hope that you'll be able to join us for all those events. Just some announcements before we start the webinar. As I mentioned, we're now live. You can listen to a recording afterwards. So it is being recorded and live streamed via YouTube. The recording will be available on our website, the FIP website, and the address is shown there. You may, of course, ask questions using the question and answer box provided, and our speakers will do their best to try and answer those questions when they're not speaking. Please do also use the chat box to introduce yourself to fellow attendees at the event. You're very welcome to provide feedback to us about this event and indeed any other events that FIP delivers using the email address below, webinars@fip.org. And if you would like to join FIP, then there are details of how to do that in the link at the bottom of this slide. So, the FIP development goals. These are really key for data intelligence. They were launched by the International Pharmaceutical Federation in September 2020 and are a key resource for transforming the pharmacy profession over the next decade, globally, regionally, and nationally. They align with FIP's mission to support global health by enabling the advancement of pharmaceutical practice, sciences and education, and are set to transform pharmacy in alignment with wider global imperatives underpinning the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Today's event links very strongly to Development Goal 11, which is impact and outcomes. You will see each FIP development goal is broken down into elements of workforce and education, practice and science. So for impact and outcomes in development goal 11, the practice element is evidence of the impact of pharmaceutical services in terms of health outcomes and quality of life, improved efficiency of health systems and sustainability. So our speaker today will be talking about his perspectives on the practice element and how we secure evidence of impact. This event also links very strongly to development goal 12, which is pharmacy intelligence. Again, this development goal is split into 3 elements: workforce, practice, and science. And you'll see the workforce element as an example is that a national strategy and corresponding actions to collate and share workforce data and workforce planning activities is available. The FIP Global Pharmaceutical Observatory is the engine room of global pharmaceutical data collection and intelligence. And the FI Global Pharmaceutical Observatory will measure and monitor progress towards the development goals by collating data and intelligence. The FIP Global Pharmaceutical Observatory's mission centers around data, intelligence, advocacy, and reporting. We know the importance of data and for data to provide us with evidence which demonstrates impact. So our first task is always to collect or collate valid global data on workforce, education, practice, and pharmaceutical science. We must undertake comprehensive analyses of collated data to provide accessible, high-quality intelligence, and all this must be communicated innovatively to promote our member organisations' impacts on health. This communication will often be via the FIP Atlas, which is our visualization platform for displaying, and I'll give you a bit more on all of this at the end of today's event. And finally, we will provide evidence-based strategic information, reports, and guidance on the application of pharmaceutical science policies, practices, and services. Very briefly, the work of the FIP Global Pharmaceutical Observatory is that we will continue to take a tried and tested needs-based approach to addressing data and development goal challenges through the development of our inclusive multinational needs assessment program, which we call MNAP. As I've mentioned, the FIP GPO Atlas is a platform for showcasing our members' needs and priorities, supported by the data from the GPO and allowing FIP to identify opportunities for developing pharmacy with and for and through our member organisations. We have a GPO database that is a repository for FIP's pharmacy and pharmaceutical science data. It contains data that informs the indicators that will be used to track progress against the FIP development goals. The FIP development goals, as I've mentioned, provide the framework for needs assessment and for prioritisation of members' organisations to undertake relevant to their national situation. Indicators will be a way to measure and monitor progress and transformations for workforce, science, and practice. We also have a Data and Intelligence Commission, which provides strategic advice to FIP on the advocacy and delivery of the GPO project and the achievement of its vision and strategic objectives. So, evidence and impact, and the reason for us all being here today. An evidence-based approach must be fundamental and focused on pharmaceutical practice, science, education, and workforce. But what is evidence and why is it important? Sackett et al. Defined it as the conscientious, explicit, and judicious use of the current best evidence in making decisions about the care of individual patients. Healthcare policymakers have extended this concept into their own decision-making processes to improve quality of care and patient outcomes, and to fund existing and novel therapies and services, and to control expenditure growth in the healthcare system. Evidence and impact is also important for demonstrating the contribution of the profession in a number of areas, and we've listed them below, including improving effectiveness of services, enhancing patient safety, ensuring effectiveness of treatments and devices, as I've mentioned, supporting new models of care, enhanced decision-making, contributing to policy development and supporting population health, as well as making best use of resources. So, today's programme, that's a brief introduction about evidence and impact and what we hope to achieve and setting the scene. We will shortly be hearing about evidence and impact from the patient-centred perspective from Dr. Noé Garrion Escriva. We will then be hearing about the pharmaceutical science perspective from Dr. Safa Damia. And we will then be hearing about the pharmaceutical education and pharmaceutical workforce perspective from Dr. Shirley Marlianti and Dr. Hilwan Yuda Taruna, before closing off at the end. The aim of today's program is to really think about how we can use evidence and impact across all those areas. Today's learning objectives are to discuss approaches to securing evidence for the impact of the pharmaceutical workforce and pharmaceutical services, to discuss strategies and programs in place to enable timely access to safe, effective, and affordable medicines, and to identify challenges and opportunities for generating evidence and impact. So, without further ado, I'm very delighted to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Noe Garrion Escriva, who is a hospital pharmacist. He works at the Hospital de la Santa Cruz in Barcelona. He's also an associate professor at the School of Health Science, and he's a coordinator of the work group on respiratory diseases at the Spanish Society of Hospital Pharmacy. So thank you so much. Noe, please do take the floor.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me here, for having me here. Thank you, Chris, and thank you to the FIP. Let me 1 second to share my presentation. Okay, I think. No, okay. So the title of my presentation, as Chris said, is Evidence and its Impact, the Pharmacy Practice Perspective. So we're going to talk about evidence in healthcare. And you know that evidence is a cornerstone in healthcare. So in the end, we need solid evidence to achieve the highest level of health and equity. That's what we want. Sorry, but to get this evidence and to assess all this information and improve things, what we need first is data, of course. And this data can have many phases. On one hand, we can talk about our daily regular clinical practice. So we have this daily clinical data, and it can be compared with research data that you do on purpose to do some research. For example, a clinical trial or an observational prospective study. Sometimes they can coexist if you do an observational data using retrospective data that you have collected before in your daily practice, but it can be normally separated. On the other hand, another perspective, we can talk about the individual data you are collecting from each patient you are attending, the classical approach. So in the end, you have a sample of 50, 100, 200 people that you have attended firstly. And another way of seeing this is a more global or big data approach, where you have not only your data, but thousands of people information that you can assess and have with artificial intelligence, for example, some information. So they are very separated ways of working. We're focusing on this classical versus big data approaches with 2 examples. Okay, we're going real life examples. The first one is about drug-related problems in clinical practice, and it is an approach related to this classical healthcare data when you are working patient by patient. Okay. So I'm going to give you some context. The thing is that our societies are aging, we are getting older, and with this we are having more chronic conditions, so the patients are more complex to manage. Then as we have more chronic conditions, we also have more polypharmacy. Some examples: 90% of the people 75 plus who are admitted to the hospital have polypharmacy. So this means it's most of them. Also, we know this that these people who are very complex with lots of chronic conditions are the principal cause or the principal type of patient admitted in medical specialties such as geriatrics, internal medicine, respiratory ward, neurology ward, etc. So most of these patients are chronic patients. And related to these admissions, we also know that drugs are one of the most important causes of problems. In fact, in 40% of the admissions, we have pharmacologic iatrogenesis. And in fact, it's depending on the study, it's the 6th or the 8th cause of mortality in hospitals. So we have these patients and they are at high risk of drug-related problems, especially in medical specialties. Why? We have seen complexity and polypharmacy, but also you have to think that these people are admitted with acute problems. There are lots of changes in their medication. Because they are acute, they evolve differently. So they have to keep going with the changes again and again, depending on the evolution of the patient. They can have acute renal or hepatic impairment, so you have to check it, and other problems may arise. And the longer we are admitted in a hospital, the higher the probability to have drug-related problems. So we are lucky because we're pharmacists. Oh, I forgot. There are some people that are younger, but well, in this type of specialties, if you are admitted and you're young, you may be very severe. So you will be using a lot of drugs and also will be at very risk of having problems. So we're lucky because we are pharmacists and we can help in all of these points, and we can help patients to improve that. Okay. So what do we do? For example, in our hospital, we have a standardized work process. First, the patient is admitted. The doctor is doing a prescription, and then we do our initial assessment. This initial assessment is standardized, as I told you, and this is a summary. We take into account some patient-related variables, the acute problem, the chronic conditions, allergies, hepatic function, data from the labs, etc. And we also take into account medication-related variables, interactions, duplicities, medication reconciliation, dosage, etc. So we do all of this, and I told you it's a standardized workflow or work process. So we have an initial assessment, we then performed a follow-up, and there are some transversal activities. When we do our job, we register all these interventions. So for example, this is a little complex, I will try to make you understand. If we find a drug-related problem, if we don't find it, it's okay, we validate and we do our regular monitoring. Perfect. If we find a drug-related problem, we're going to intervene, and then it can be accepted, not accepted. They probably will change the prescription. And after all of this, we're going also, if this is corrected, to validate the prescription. When we do that, we register all this information by means of using the PSNE, this classification for drug-related problems. They divide into problem, cause, intervention, and result. Okay. So by doing this, we found there were some challenges that we have to face. For example, the prevalence of DRP it's not clear, because normally you find it in studies with specific protocols for studies, but that not comparable to regular practice, or in a specific condition for hypertensive patients. But we wanted something that was very general, but because we are working with all our patients. So we didn't have much information on this. We also wanted to characterize these drug-related problems, what type of drug-related problems are happening most frequently, and also what type of interventions are we doing, and are they being accepted? We didn't find much information on this. And related to the probability of having these problems, we know that polypharmacy is one of the leading causes, but there is controversy with other variables, and we also wanted to know about that. Okay. So we said, okay, we are doing this register. We can provide evidence. So let's produce evidence. So we did an observational study with our register doing daily. It was a 1-year study. It was real clinical practice, our standardized clinical practice. We included all patients that were admitted into the hospital to all of these medical specialties, and we were registering variables, of course, social demographics, clinical variables, about treatments, about the problems, the interventions, the follow-up, etc. And finally, we performed some analysis that is not so important now. So let's move on to the results, okay? To the results of the study, which were, we had more than 106 admissions. They were very old. The age was about 72.8 years. 45% of them were women. And there are some information, it's not very important, but for example, multimorbidity. People have 6 chronic conditions when they were admitted. As I told you before, we are dealing with complex patients. Some of them had renal impairment, some of them came from nursing home, so they were very old and complex patients. With regard to medication, we found that polypharmacy was present in most of the patients. In fact, as a mean, we found that each patient was having 8 drugs when they entered to the hospital. So we did some analysis with this polypharmacy. For example, you can see these graphics here. The darker the points, the higher is the frequency. Okay, so for people in their 70s, 80s, they are the ones who are having more polypharmacy, like 10, 12 drugs when they are admitted. And this one on the right, you can see with more chronic conditions, the polypharmacy is increasing. Okay, it's like a linear increase. So it's very easy to understand. Okay, the main result was this. 45% of the patients have had at least one drug-related problem. So we did a lot of things as pharmacists, and we also found that 38% of these drug-related problems were associated with reconciliation when you are going from home to the hospital or going back home, okay? So we also analyzed very interesting features. For example, what type of drug-related problems were happening. Dose selection was the most common, followed by drug selection. Also the type of interventions, if they were accepted, and finally, if they were solved. Most of the cases, we solved the drug-related problem. In some cases, we didn't know because maybe the patient was released and they were already home, and we didn't know what was the outcome. Okay. Finally, I told you before, we also wanted to assess where the factors associated with a higher probability of having a drug-related problem during an admission. So we performed a multivariate logic regression with a lot of variables, and we found that polypharmacy, allergies, overweight or being obese, and renal impairment were the variables associated with a higher risk of drug-related problems. So we published that, but it was not the most important thing. The most important thing is that we showed our activities. So this improved care. Why? Because we used all this data to learn, to do some documents and improve daily. We also started to give more consistency, homogeneity, continuity to our work. We interacted a lot with professionals because we were sharing summaries of these results and talking to them about the most frequent problems so that we can prevent them in the future. So we are all learning with these results. We also did some protocols or documents if we saw that something could be improved by means of doing that. And we also try to empower healthcare policies. It's not so easy, but also we tried. By doing all this, we also we saw that we got more integrated in several committees in the hospital. Okay, so this was the first approach, the classical one. We have our patients, we take our data, but then we were talking about a more bigger approach with big data. And we are going to give another example. This one is the use of artificial intelligence to detect patients at risk of adverse effects. No? So when you think about artificial intelligence, you may think of that. It's the beginning of a new era, okay? Some of you may think it's the end of an era, no? Maybe. Maybe some others will say, okay, that's paranormal. I don't understand anything of it. But most of us, and maybe you say, oh, it's so good, it's so fashionable. I don't know very much what can I do with that, but let's do something because it seems it's fashionable now, okay? So as a summary, data science is an approach to extract results, to get results from your data. Okay, you can think about it as a tree. As a tree, it's not working. Sorry. Okay, the tree appeared. So you have your data, and with your data, you can get some results. Sorry, but it's not working very well, but it's getting slower. Okay. Now, in data science, you have several branches. One of them is artificial intelligence. So it's one branch, one methodology to do that, okay? Artificial intelligence. So this is kind of a summary. You have data science, you have a branch which is artificial intelligence, and machine learning, which is some kind of sub-branch of artificial intelligence. Machine learning is doing this. You're having data, you are having then results. How? By means of artificial intelligence algorithms. It's only that. So you have an email and you can say that's spam. You can text. You can have a text in English and you can translate it by means of this machine learning to German, or you can an audio file and translate it into a text, for example, or pictures and have a diagnostic. So that's examples, very basic examples of that. Okay. So we found a problem in our daily routine, which was, I'm going to tell you right now, which was antiphospholipid syndrome and anticoagulants. Okay, so let's talk about antiphospholipid syndrome. You can see some of the manifestations here. In fact, people with this syndrome have many different types of problems, but one of the most important is the high risk of thromboembolism. Very high risk, and it's a very severe problem if you have it. So let's talk about this risk of thromboembolism. And you can think, okay, you can have primary prevention, maybe with anticoagulants, okay? But normally you don't do it. You don't do it unless unless you have a pregnant woman, because pregnant woman can have abortions because of this syndrome. So in case, sorry, it's not working now. Okay. In case of pregnant women, you use anticoagulants. In fact, you use heparins just to prevent these problems. So this is the first thing, primary prevention. But if you already have a thromboembolism, you have first to treat it, and then, yes, you have to use secondary prevention with anticoagulants, okay? So in this case, you have to give anticoagulants to all these patients. You can start with heparin, but then you translate it, you just use oral antivitamin K drugs, okay? But what about these new direct oral anticoagulants, rivaroxaban, apixaban, edoxaban? Why don't use them? Okay, so and it's not only me who is thinking this. There were some studies about this, some clinical trials, but the problem is that suddenly in one of these trials, they have to terminate it prematurely. You can see here this, because the thing is that they saw that it wasn't safe. Using this type of drugs wasn't safe, and people using these drugs compared with warfarin, for example, they were having a very high risk of thromboembolic events. They were having thromboembolic events in the clinical trial. So there were some alerts, national alerts, European alerts across all the countries in the world. This is, for example, the one in Spain, and they said, okay, we have this problem, so don't use this type of drugs. And because it may be related to all the pharmaceutical family, you shouldn't use also edoxaban, apixaban, and the other drugs related to this group, okay? So that's what the alert was saying. What's the problem? The problem is that in real life, some of the patients may be using these drugs, and now we were knowing that they were at risk, but we didn't know how to have a list of the patients with the condition and with this type of medication. In fact, in our area in Spain, we didn't have a list it wasn't coded in primary care, so we couldn't get this list. And so we had this wall, okay? But then we said, okay, if we could use artificial intelligence, it's so good, maybe we can do something. Yes, we thought about some type of solution is in the hospital, which is the place where these patients go to be treated to this type of specific disease. We have everything is written in free text information. So what if we could get this information and put it in a structured data form? We could have the information of the patients with the drugs and then just stop the medication. Okay. So the thing is that you in a hospital or in your pharmacy, you can have structured data about the weight, for example, or the blood pressure, and you can have unstructured data, which is something which is written or an image. For example, in the hospital, we know that 80% of the relevant clinical information is in free text. So there's a lot of information, but we can't check thousands and thousands of texts to detect that manually. It's impossible. So we need machine learning. We are using big data because we're talking about thousands and thousands of patients' information. And it's also deep real world evidence because it's real world practice, what we're talking about. So to do that, we validated a tool which is called Savannah. We used 400,000 clinical records from patients. We assessed some variables that what we wanted to assess, antiphospholipid syndrome and other variables. So we used Savannah, and we had some results. There was a list, okay? And then we have to validate it. So there were two people, like in a systematic review, checking if it was correct, looking at the clinical records where Savannah found that this patient was having or not the disease, for example. And then we got some metrics, like if you're having a test of COVID validated, the specificity, and all these type of metrics, okay? So also we thought, okay, we have some kind of metrics, but what if we could compare with a gold standard, which is a list of patients that we already know that have the disease, and then we can compare if this artificial intelligence is detecting all these patients. We didn't have it at the beginning, but then we managed to have some of this information with some work. And the idea is that you can check for your gold standard if your results in Savannah are being found or not. And for example, we have here in right, this case here was not found by Savannah, by this tool. But another thing we can do is, okay, maybe you are getting some information with this tool that is not in the gold standard. And it's also something that we saw. So we have these two types of gold standards that we were assessing just to see the metrics and the performance of this artificial intelligence. The thing with artificial intelligence, I'm finishing right now, is that we haven't finished. When you start with something like this, it's a long journey. The official version is, okay, we're doing artificial intelligence, but then the reality is that you spend some years, a lot of contracts and informatic problems. So you have to work a lot, but I hope we can finish all of this in some months, okay? So I'm finishing this part. The thing is that we have different problems, and to face them, we need different approaches. And that's why I gave you some very different examples at the end. And also, there is much evidence in the iceberg. There's a lot of things that we can, that we don't know yet, and that it will be very useful in the future. And the iceberg is in the tip of our fingers. So we just need to start to do these things, okay? So thank you very much. I think later there will be some questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Noe, for that really fascinating walkthrough and the classical healthcare data collection approach for generating evidence, and then looking at the big data approach for generating evidence using data science and artificial intelligence. And it really is an area that is taking off at the moment and moving very fast. So we all need to keep an eye on it. Okay, let's move on to our second speaker, and I'm really delighted to welcome Dr. Safa Damia. Safa is a pharmaceutical scientist. She's assistant professor of pharmaceutics at King Abdulaziz University, and that's in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. She has an IBM Digital Badge for Artificial Intelligence Foundation specialization, and her focus of research is on digitalizing pharmaceutical data by developing intelligent solutions for patient-oriented problems using artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies. So without further ado, I hand over to Safa. Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chris. First, I'd like to thank the organizers for their invitation to this very interesting event. And hello, everyone. My talk will be about the evidence and its impact, the pharmaceutical science perspective. My presentation is divided into 3 main points. First, an introduction on data and intelligence. Then data and intelligence for advancing pharmaceutical sciences. I'm going to present some examples, and finally conclusions. There is an increasing amount of data that are generated each day, including pharmaceutical data. It's been reported that around 2.5 million new scientific papers are published annually. And in 2021 only, there were around 25,000 PubMed reported publications in pharmaceutical sciences. At the same time, there were around 12,000 PubMed reported publications on artificial intelligence in 2021 only as well. So this figure shows the number of publications and the year for the PubMed reported publications using the term pharmaceutical sciences. As shown here, there is a significant increase in the reported publications on pharmaceutical sciences, especially in recent years. And in parallel, also the number of PubMed reported publications on artificial intelligence significantly increasing recently. So what is big data? One of the most recognized definitions of big data is the 4V's definition, which stands for volume, velocity, variety, and veracity. However, definitions of big data usually lacks consistency and quantification. Big data is generated from diverse sources and types of data, including textbooks and publications, social media, electronic health records, which all contribute to its diversity and complexity. So this brings the question in pharmaceutical sciences: is big data a challenge or an opportunity? Of course, it's both. It's a challenge and an opportunity, especially with the modern advancing technologies of artificial intelligence and machine learning in particular. Before I give a brief introduction or a definition on what AI is, I'd like to start with when AI started. The official term artificial intelligence was first introduced in 1956. And since then, AI has had cycles of success as well as so-called AI winters. And recently, AI gained increasing interest in a wide range of fields, including pharmaceutical sciences. So what is AI? Despite its long history, there is still no standard definition of AI or artificial intelligence. However, mimicking human intelligence using computer systems is the main principle or concept of AI. AI has different types. One of the most commonly used types of artificial intelligence is machine learning. And machine learning also has different types, including artificial neural networks or ANNs, support vector machine, decision trees, and random forests. Today, I'll focus on artificial neural networks because they showed high success in different areas in pharmaceutical sciences, including drug design and discovery, pharmaceutical formulations, and pre-formulations. So what is artificial neural networks? Artificial neural networks are biologically inspired computational models that mimic human neurons. As shown in this figure, for a typical biological neuron and an artificial neural network, a typical biological neuron consists of a cell body that contains a nucleus and controls the cell activity, and dendrites, which are the thin threads that carry the information to the cell, and the axon, which is one long thread that transport the information to the next cell. Correspondingly, an artificial neural network consists of three main components, which are input layer, hidden layer, and an output layer. So now I'll present some examples of using artificial intelligence and machine learning in particular in pharmaceutical sciences. The first example is for addressing a problem in pharmaceutical sciences, which is the problem of drugs for aqueous solubility. One of the most important problems in pharmaceutical sciences is drugs for aqueous solubility. It's been estimated that around 90% of drug candidates in research and development pipeline are poorly water soluble. And poor aqueous solubility may result in a poor bioavailability and poor drug's efficacy, and may necessitate administration of higher doses and increase the chance of side effects and cost per patient. Indomethacin is an example of a drug that has poor aqueous solubility. Its solubility in water is less than 1 milligram per ml. So there are different methods that can enhance or improve the solubility of drugs in water. One of these methods is using molecules or compounds called hydrotropes. Hydrotropes are amphiphilic in nature. That means they have hydrophilic and hydrophobic regions. And a typical example of hydrotropes is sodium benzoate. Hydrotropes can enhance the apparent solubility of poorly water-soluble drug molecules in water. So we developed a machine learning application using artificial neural networks for prediction of the solubility enhancement of indomethacin using different hydrotrope concentrations. So the experimental data generated for the measurement of the solubility of the drug, the solubility enhancement of indomethacin using different hydrotrope concentrations were subsequently used to train an artificial neural network model for prediction of the solubility enhancement of the drug. So this figure shows the correlation between observed and predicted solubility of indomethacin enhancement by different hydrotropic concentrations, and it provided high accuracy. The second example is for the prediction of membrane insertion potential of cell-penetrating peptides. Cell-penetrating peptides are often used as transporter systems that carry different therapeutic agents from extracellular into the cell. So a machine learning application was developed to predict the insertion potential of cell-penetrating peptides. The model was trained on experimental data using the maximum change in surface pressure. And the maximum change in surface pressure is used as an indication of the membrane insertion potential of cell-penetrating peptides. So this figure shows a comparison between the observed and predicted maximum change in surface pressure following injection of various cell-penetrating peptides below 3 model phospholipid monolayers. The next example of using AI in pharmaceutical sciences is for the prediction of PLJ microparticle sizes in microfluidics. Here, we integrated 2 promising technologies, which are microfluidics and machine learning. So at the left side of this slide, it shows the microfluidics part, which is used to generate and control precise microparticle sizes using microfluidics. And on the right side of this slide, it shows the machine learning part, which we use the experimental data for PLJ microparticle sizes to predict the PLJ microparticle sizes, which is an important and a key factor for particle stability. So this figure shows the correlation between observed and predicted particle sizes generated by a 3D flow focusing droplet chip with a single junction. So it shows the training test validation sets and the developed and trained model, ANN model, was further used to predict an external data set. Finally, with AI and COVID-19, of course, AI played an important role in finding potential anti-COVID-19 break. And for example, Benevolent AI, they reported the use of machine learning to identify drugs for COVID-19. So in conclusion, AI and machine learning are promising tools in drug research and development. Digitalizing pharmaceutical data is a very promising area in which AI and machine learning technologies can be discovered and effectively employed. AI can reduce expensive laboratory experimentations, time and cost. Factors that may determine the choice of the machine learning method to be implemented include the type of the data and the size of the data set. And finally, more insights into various problems in pharmaceutical sciences can be explored using AI and machine learning. Finally, I'd like to thank all my collaborators and to thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Safa, and another fascinating look at artificial intelligence, this time from the pharmaceutical science perspective. I'd never heard of artificial neural networks before, so it's amazing to see their ability to predict things like solubility and microparticle sizes. So thank you so much. Moving on to our final speakers, we've got a double act for you now, and our speaker number 3 is Shirley. Shirley, if we could go back to your biography slide, please. And Shirley is an Indonesian registered pharmacist. She is a colleague of mine and is FAP data and intelligence specialist. Her PhD research focused on analysis and transformation of the pharmacy workforce in Indonesia. Shirley's a former YPG, so Young Pharmacists Group president, and a member of the steering committee of the WHO Global Health Workforce Network Youth Hub. Joining Shirley, I'm also delighted to welcome Dr. Hilwan Yuda Taruna. And Hilwan is Vice President of the Indonesian Pharmacists Association. He's a member of FIP and Senior Lecturer at the Department of Chemistry, University of Riau, and member of the Indonesian Accreditation Agency for Higher Education and Health. He's also the co-author of 5 books and more than 50 journal articles. So welcome, Shirley and Hilwan, and the floor is all yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Chris, for the introduction. And thank you so much for FIP today, for the opportunity to speak today. And I am happy to also double act with Dr. Hilwan today, which is actually my role model and also my mentor. So today we will talk about how we recommend policy development in Indonesia through evidence gathering. So it's about evidence-based policy workforce transformation program in Indonesia. And Dr. Hilwan later on will talk about the digital transformation, which is actually how our ongoing project in Indonesia, actually on how we can use digital to support with the workforce development and in Indonesia. So let's just go to the next slide, which is actually I would like to talk a little bit about why do we need actually workforce transformation. So this may be a common challenges that we have in some countries around the world related to aging population with more comorbidities. And I think the first speaker, Dr. Noah, before also talk about some complex medicine, complex comorbidities about patients and comorbidities, many complex diseases, and it also needs pharmacists to tackle these challenges as well, to be more advanced in their practice, to be able to provide a better pharmaceutical services to patients as well. And we also heard quite a lot about a campaign related to let's invest in our health workforce, let's invest in pharmacy workforce, and we know that if we have a high quality pharmacy workforce, it will absolutely create a significant impact on health outcomes. And there are a lot of evidence as well related to this. Although we have similar challenges, maybe particularly in Indonesia, with other countries around the world as well, but there is no one size fits all. So that is why it is important for us to always develop program or recommend policy development through a needs-based approach, and that's something that we will talk today. So how did we conduct actually this needs-based approach in Indonesia? So first, it is important for us to understand first about our capacity. How does pharmacies in Indonesia look like? How does the trend? How does the shape in Indonesia looks like? And I would like to bring you a little bit attention about the capacity that we have in Indonesia. This data was actually collected in 2019, and if you can see in the right side, our pharmacies in Indonesia is actually it's towards a younger generation. It's also towards more female. And what actually does evidence say about having more female in pharmacies in pharmacy profession and having younger generation in pharmacy profession? Some evidence said like there is a need to develop a flexible career pathway, particularly for female, related to the career break and any other things. And also some evidence also said like related to the younger generation, it is important to develop a structure and also career guidance for younger generation, so they will be motivated throughout their pharmacy profession. So that's how the data look like. So we first identify this and explore our pharmacy workforce capacity, and following that we explore more about what does the stakeholder needs. What I mean by stakeholder here is basically the pharmacists and also the policymaker. We need to have a look what does they need, what does they think about the workforce development in Indonesia. And we conducted a project in 2018-2019. We use a theory of change model, the principle of theory of change model, where we explore the needs from the stakeholder. We map this toward our endpoint. In this case, we use FIP development goals as our framework, as our goal of what we want to achieve. And then following that, we also analyze and then we look at the gap. What are the gaps? What are the tools that we need to develop our workforce? If you would like to know more about how we conduct that, this is a paper that we recently published, and you can also look at that on how we conduct this needs-based assessment. And the outputs of this needs-based assessment, actually, we identify 6 priorities according to the needs of our organization, and also map to the FIP development goals, where we identify these red circles, 6 top DG priorities. And today I will discuss briefly about the tools that we developed for number 4, which is advanced and specialist development and competency development. And later on, Dr. Hirwan will share a little bit about number 12, workforce intelligence, on how we use digital to support the workforce development. And for number 4 and 5, this is also a recent paper that we published related to the development of Indonesian Advanced Development Framework, which we conducted using the adopt and adapt approach. And we adopt and adapt the framework from the Global Advanced Development Framework, and we also included all stakeholders, which is in this case practicing pharmacists, invite them to use this framework and to see if this can be applicable in Indonesia setting. And we received around 6,000 respondents, and most of them actually are very willing to use this framework. And that's actually the things that we recommend for the policy development in Indonesia, to develop a career pathway for pharmacists in Indonesia by utilizing this framework. So apart from the development of career pathway for Indonesian pharmacists, we also support, according to the result that we got from this project, we also support the achievement of the number 4, the development goals number 4, which is advanced and specialist development. And we are currently in the 3rd step, which is we are currently developing the professional recognition system to recognize advanced pharmacists in Indonesia. So what would be the next step for our project? So we basically, as I mentioned previously, so we are currently developing a career pathway for pharmacists by utilizing this framework, and we are currently advocating this to the Ministry of Health. And I saw that some of our workforce transformation team are actually here. So I would like to acknowledge the work that they have done as well. So they are currently advocating to the Ministry of Health to develop this framework, to utilize and implement this framework together. And at the end, we are planning to also develop a professional recognition system. And to develop the professional recognition system, we will need a portfolio system, which actually will be shared later on by Dr. Hilwan by using the digital platform. Before I give the floor to Dr. Hilwan, I will share some key points from this project. So basically, we are doing the evidence-based policy workforce transformation through our needs-based approach, and we include all stakeholders. And the most important thing is pharmacists, because they will be the one who will be impacted by the policy that we will develop. The Indonesian Pharmacists Association actually also developed vision, and they have done this in partnership with the International Pharmaceutical Federation, I mean FIP, and we utilize the FIP development goals to prioritize our project implementation according to the needs of the organization as well. And the third point that I would like to highlight is partnership can speed up the process, and last but not least, data intelligence and strong organization are also the key. So I will give the floor now to Dr. Hilwan to share an example from the digital transformation project that we are currently doing. Dr. Hilwan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Shirley. I would like to thanks also Chris, and then also for the organizer for these opportunities. And then I would like to say hello to all the attendants today. Next, please. The outlines of this speech, I would like to give some introduction and milestones of the SIAP, and as well SIAP as a portal for Indonesian pharmacists, some achievement and conclusions. As we know that the Industrial Revolution is a massive, fast and radical changes that influence human activities or the way of human conduct changes. The fourth industrial revolution is development of the computing, including broadband internet, new sensors, big data, cloud computing, and machine learning. As we know that in the world right now, Internet of Things is introduced to your home. Even you can control your fridge, you can control your air conditioning from far away or remotely. And we also expect for a bigger expectation, like mass production of everything, wide coverage, especially in the health care, including internet pharmacies. And then also we expect for faster services. Next. The Indonesian Pharmacists Association, or in Indonesia we call it Ikatan Apoteker Indonesia, the abbreviation is IAI, is the only organization for Indonesian pharmacists recognized by the government. So there is no other organization that recognized by the government. Currently, there are approximately 93,000 pharmacists in Indonesia based on the data published by the Minister of Health. The data is in 2022. A single database has been set up by AI to manage all professional requirement, what so-called Sistem Informasi Apoteker, or the abbreviation is SIAP. The main function of this program is a data management for displaying 5 years portfolio for all the pharmacies in Indonesia. And it is also used for collaborative and interaction monitoring and evaluation of member professionalism, including facilitating other health organization, health professional organization and stakeholders. The platform has significant improved, and some new features have been made since then based on the existing needs. We call it modular development. Currently, more than 80 might be scientists or working in the area, not including for the pharmaceutical care. The program has 28 features and 108 menus. On the basis of these features, some 120 statistical data can be produced and analyzed. Next, please. Here, the milestones, what we have been going through. As you know that in 1955 is the first organization was established, what so-called Pharmacists Association, and then up to 2018, all the national organizers just manage policy, and then all the members will be organized by provincial and municipal organizers. After 2018, we start in 2019, the beginning, starting consolidation of development system, and then establishing a team, and then mitigated 1,200 members, data of 12,000 members, and then activated 6,000 members. We have disseminated all the program through provincial organization. Here, the first day we met with other organization from provincial level. We asked for them whether they have a system already, a digital system to manage all the members, but only one province, which is Western Java, has really good systems. And then in 2021, we start to have like 80,000 members using SIAP, and with the highly usage during pandemic COVID-19. This is what I always say that this is like blessing in disguise, whether in this condition in the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, we started using everything online. Previously, when people would like to get their certificate, they have to come to the office, and then we have to go through all the documents and then give the recommendation to have them registered to the government. But nowadays, everything is controlled by the system. Up to 2022, we have intensive webinar, and then we have also online OSCE and OSPI. We expecting for the future that more IoT based activities will be included in the system, and more counterfeit product in the market will be monitored and need for easy and quick services for all the members in Indonesia. Next. The system, the single portal is called SIAP for the Pharmacists Indonesia, has been controlled in central organizer. We have our own server in the big data center with one is the main server and the other one is DRC or data recovery, disaster recovery center, and then we control everything by using internet, of course, and then we have a partner to manage the server. Next. The data that we collect in the database is basic data based on the ID card, including a photo ID. We also collect the certificate of registration released by the Ministry of Health. And then we also collect the educational background, including the certificate. We also collected non-degree training certificate, and then we collect the expertise and special interest. I would like to focus on the expertise and special interest. In this case, we can follow the capability of one person, or we can also promote their expertise to give a chance to get a better job or whatever, because it is in the platform. The certificate of competency will be included in 150 credits, which include daily professional activities, CPDs, learning activities, outreach, and publication. Next, please. The continuous professional development carry out activities on a regular basis. So every service that given by the pharmacist will be recorded using, they can use their mobile phone or their laptop on a daily basis. It is also, they carry out different kinds of learning activities, including webinar or group discussion. Keep a record in the way that the most convenient for the pharmacist. So we have a big database with a big space, so everyone can include their activities, attachment, and whatever they like. Carry out activities that might improve pharmacist practices and benefit their users. So people also can interact to each other, and then the activities may be regional, maybe provincial, or might be national. So everyone can get the information from the system. Here, I would like to show you the traffic and the customer satisfaction. These are the data on January 2020 up to April 2021. It's up and down. So the peak is approximately 600 per month, 600 hits per month. This hits meaning that request for services. And the bar down there is customer satisfaction data, which is we find that the approximately 63% they satisfied, very highly satisfied with the services, and then 30% satisfied, and only 6% average. And then there is also unsatisfied 1%. Maybe they have a problem with the connection, or maybe they have a problem with the technology, but we don't really know what happened with this 1%. Okay, next. As I mentioned earlier, that SIAP is bringing AAI or the Indonesian Pharmacists Association to significant improvement in members' services. They have 28 features and 100 menus and 120 statistical data. Since this program just established like last 2 years, it's really has been used very intensively. However, not all the data has been used by even by the organization or even by the government up to now. But hopefully in the future, maybe certainly also might use the data to improve the services or to make like workforce transformation. And this data is available by request, and then we will be happy to work together with other parties to process this data. The SIAP is developed by a modular system, meaning that what we think that we need in the future will be developed partially and then include in the system. Next. I'm proudly to present to all the audience that we awarded for the world record from the World Record Museum of Indonesia for the most frequent webinar in 2020, which is we conducted like 73 webinars in a year. And then the next year in 2021, also almost the same number of webinars. This is the approximately the participants for each webinar is mostly about 100 or 1,000 to 100 to 1,500 people. Next. Here you go. This is the implementation of ISO IEC 27001 Information Security Management System. We just awarded on last April, and then of course this is the big achievement for the organization, as far as I know, and then people said that the auditors said that this is the only organization, health organization, who comply with the ISO IEC 27001. Of course, this is a big achievement, so we can sell this because people might trust us better than before. Next. Next, please. Here, role of SIAP in achieving FIP development goals. So, as we know that we increase the competency development. Number 5, also continuing professional development strategies. Also, number 12, pharmacy intelligence. Number 13, policy development. 14, medicines expertise. These are the current achievements. And then in the future, we hope that we can provide early career training strategies, and then advanced and specialist development, access to medicines and services, devices and services, and then the last, digital health. The last two will be started this year. Actually, we have started to make collaboration with one of the big company who manage to the digital health, and hopefully in 2023 it will be released to the public. Next. So as a conclusion, implementation of information technology is inevitable, including in healthcare professional organization. SIAP is a solution for IAI in achieving the 5 pillars of the organization, and SIAP is in line with the FIP development goals. I think that concludes my presentation. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you so much, Hilwan, and thank you so much, Shirley. And what an interesting walkthrough. Particularly, I was struck in your presentation, Shirley, how data and intelligence is key if you are to develop evidence-based policy for workforce transformation, especially if you're going to use a needs-based assessment approach. And thank you, Hilwan, for a fascinating look at the IAI database and how what a rich seam of data you have in there about professional activities and how you are helping all your members with their continuing professional developments. It's a really useful tool to have available. I know our speakers are answering your questions in the Q&A box. We are running a little short of time, so I'll move us along to wrapping up today's event. It's been great having our speakers today. I would like to sincerely thank all our speakers. And as I say, the recording of the episode will be available on the www.events.fip.org. I hope you've enjoyed this walkthrough evidence and impact from the perspectives of pharmacy practice, pharmaceutical science, and for workforce and education. Very different perspectives, but a lot that I have learnt myself, and I'm sure you have too. A bit of an exclusive for you today. The Global Pharmaceutical Observatory website, or microsite as we're calling it, has been launched today, and that has a lot of very useful data and intelligence on it. And if you want to have a preview of that, you'll probably be the first people to look at it, as it was only went live this morning. So please do have a look at that. Just some other notices. FIP Pharmacy Practice Research Summer Meeting is going on in Utrecht in the Netherlands on the 4th and 5th of July. You can find more about that by scanning the QR code on the screen. Sorry, the slides are moving a bit slowly. We'd also like to remind you about the 80th FIP World Congress of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Science, which is being held in the really wonderful city of Seville in Spain, 18th to the 22nd of September 2022. And the Congress theme is Pharmacy United in the Recovering of Healthcare. Program topics are shown on the screen now. Abstract submission deadline is the 5th of June. So if you want to submit an abstract, please do submit as soon as you can. We'll be the results of the abstract submissions on the 1st of July, and the early bird registration deadline for the Congress is 15th of July. There's more information about the Congress at the website seville2022.fip.org. The next event in the Evidence and Impact series will be in July. Please do check out our events website to check when that is. And just finally, thank you all for attending. I hope you've enjoyed today's event and been able to pick up a lot about evidence and impact. Thank you so much. Take care and goodbye.